Hi, everyone. It's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thanks so much for joining me today. As you know, we are in the midst of an advocacy effort. We are recommending that states use enhanced federal funding to compensate family caregivers, to provide counseling, and to provide a break. I am in the Chicagoland area. It's very hot right now, and I have not been able to get my air conditioning cover off. So I have my windows open and I live by O'Hare. So if you hear the airplanes flying over, that's the sound. And it sounds like they are landing in my parking lot, but they are not. Okay. So I've asked one of our certified caregiving consultants, Beverly Nance, to join me today. I thought it would be helpful to really see who benefits from the state's really implementing our three recommendations. Beverly cares for her daughter, and she also is a retired employee of the Postal Service, and she has her own business. She manufactures puzzles in her basement. So, Beverly, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Denise.
Okay, so your daughter has been approved for a respite program. In essence, we just went through this. So you read me from her letter, which approves her for 300 hours of respite beginning in June for 12 months.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we were looking at the calculations around what kind of a break does that give you? So 300 hours over a period of 12 months is a break, but I wondered if you could describe how many hours every day you provide help and care to your daughter.
With the exception of these 300 hours, if she gets to use them all, um, I'm it for the rest of that.
So you're 24/7,
Yes,
365 days a year. And I also think it's important that people understand that when you are caring for a family member, there are no weekends and there are no holidays. So when Christmas comes around, it's just like every other day during caregiving.
that is correct.
So these 300 hours are important to you, but they're also not enough.
There could be more, and over the years, you just come to understand that there's so many kids that need it, and there's just not enough providers or organizations that provide it. Daughter.
Absolutely, which is why we want to enhance respite programs with additional funding. Especially if you think about the pandemic, it's been hard to get a break during the pandemic. Now more than ever, family caregivers need a break. Something that was interesting that we talked about in April during your presentation that was part of the caring conference was respite and what you think about respite. So you are grateful for the opportunity to get a break. Your daughter enjoys her time away because she's connected with colleagues and she has socialization. You are, however, sometimes have to work through how you think about respite because there's guilt that you feel around taking a break from caregiving. Talk me through that. What's the guilt? What are the guilty thoughts?
Um, well, for one thing, I will say that it's always been there, and my daughter has participated in respite for years. But when you go and you think about them having respite, they have to actually, she has to leave her home in order for me to get a break. Is strange. Even though she enjoys it, it's, I still sit in the parking lot after I get her all signed in. I still sit in the parking lot and I'm on some, I've cried a couple of times because, the guilt of just thinking, why does it have to be this way for me to get a break? But I have to get the break because of my doctor actually told me that if something happened to me, who's going to take care of her? So you do need to find a way to get a break. But the guilt, it never goes away. Um, I'm just kind of used to it now. I never really thought about addressing the guilt. It's just there.
Something that you positioned your guilt around, which was really interesting to me. You said, I have another child, And I don't have to have him leave the house in order for me to get a break. Why is it the same way with my daughter? So the comparison in terms of the relationships that you have with your children also helps you feel, also leads you into that guilt. Oh my gosh. And I think there's this expectation too that we have of ourselves that maybe I shouldn't need a break. Maybe I should be able to keep going. Tell me how you work through that thought.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one because I do have an older son. He actually helps me with her and he's her co-legal guardian. But in her case, just like right before I got on here, I was rushing. I couldn't do anything with my hair or anything. So I had to get her breakfast. She was up running up and down the stairs all night. It's the constant care. So you not only do you have the guilt, you also have the missed sleep. Because she was up at 3, 4 this morning, running up and down the stairs, going in the kitchen. You know, she doesn't have the whatever it is that you have to make you that tells you when you're full. So she just eats and eats and eats. And then I thought I heard her choking. So like I had to jump up and run into the kitchen and see what is going on. It's like being on constant alert all the time. And if you don't, you're thinking, wow, God, what's going to happen? Is she going to hurt herself or burn the house down? Or I don't have that with my son. You know, it's different when you're caring for somebody, you're on 24/7. And just because, you know, you're going to respite, you do feel like, uh, I sit here sometimes and I think, I wonder what they're doing. So I'm not able to really, it's like, relax.
So here's something that I think is so interesting, which is missing in our conversations about self care during caregiving, which is how hard it is for us to relax. So while your daughter is away so that you can take a break, you're still wondering and worrying about how she's doing. It's hard to turn that off, especially because you are in a heightened state of worrying. So if you're not managing a crisis, you're waiting for the next one. How do you work through those worries while she's gone?
I, um, I work my puzzles. I do puzzles. Sometimes I have a glass of wine, and you know, it doesn't really stop the worrying because I'm still thinking about it. But it's almost like I'm forcing myself to. Is it faux relax? If that's a thing, I'm telling myself that I'm relaxed, but you know, maybe I'm not as relaxed as I could be.
So, this is where our second recommendation, which is counseling for family caregivers, comes in. So, we want the states to use this enhanced federal money to fund respite programs so family caregivers can get more of a break. But we also know there's a need for counseling. There's a need to connect to support, someone who gets it, who can work with you through the worries and through the stress, even during the times when you're supposed to be on break, because the break is hard. So I wonder, Beverly, what would it be like if after you dropped your daughter off to the respite program, so it's on a weekend typically, and it's usually just once a quarter that you get this break. So your daughter is away for the weekend. What would it be like if you came home and one of the first things you did when you got home was had a call with a professional who could ask you, how are you feeling right now? Tell me what's happening. What would that be like for you?
For me, that would be very foreign. It's because it's, you know, it's not something that people really ask. A lot of times, you know, I would tell friends and family, oh, they'd ask about her, and I said, well, she's in respite, and so they would ask favors, like, okay, can you help me do such and such? Tyler's not there, so, and that was like, wait, what? I used to do it, and now, you know, I had to teach myself how to say no. But typically, no, no one asks that.
What would it be like if you knew someone was waiting to ask you that to make sure you were okay?
To have that conversation, it would be nice. Just, you know, to in the privacy of your own home, just to say how you feel without feeling the guilt, because sometimes you don't want to say how you feel.
That's the other part of it as well. So in our recommendations, we put together a one sheet describing why these recommendations are so important. And the reality is during a caregiving experience, you feel for your caree and you feel for yourself. And the truth is, it's very rare to find a place where you can talk honestly about how it feels for both of you. And when you're with your caree, it's I'm putting out my best face. I am saying everything is fine. And it's hard to let yourself down, right? To be able to say, okay, I really feel this way though. And especially Beverly, you're up at night making sure that your daughter is okay. So you have the sleep deprivation as well as the
Definitely.
emotional toll. So how do you make sure that you get the support that you need?
I don't. I actually don't. And it's odd that I actually wrote a book about it, but I don't get to practice everything that I'm preaching. It doesn't happen. It's more like if she slept on a normal schedule, it would be different, but she doesn't. And when she became an adolescent, she started having seizures. So you're up even more. There's no. I guess I like to say that I'm used to it because I did work an odd shift at the postal service anyway. I worked all shifts except the normal day shifts. There was always something to do with nighttime. But on the one hand, that did save me from probably getting fired because the doctor's appointments and everything. But to get a good night's sleep, I couldn't tell anybody what that looked like.
So deprivation, the emotional toll, the physical demands, caregiving is hard. And we have an opportunity to
Yes,
make it easier for you when
it,
states use this enhanced funding to help someone like you.
it would be a huge help, a huge help.
What would be different for you with more help?
Um, just on a typical day, I'm always thinking, when can I get some time for myself? Because I really like to get on my treadmill. I used to get on for an hour. Now it's 30 minutes. Um, instead of, I just look forward to nighttime because a lot of times that's the only time that I have that it's really quiet and it's just for me. Um, what would that look like during the day to actually have some time to yourself during the day? It's not that she's up getting into everything, but I think it's almost like people coming home from being in a war. You don't know what to do with yourself because you're always thinking, okay, like what is going to happen next? You know, having to, I don't like cooking a lot, but having to prepare meals all the time. I'm retired. I don't want to do that all the time. Just sometimes I have to wait till my son gets home from work so I can go to the grocery store because she's not always able to go in the grocery store and behave as people would like to see her behave. It would just be, I don't even, I don't even know what that would look like after all these years. My daughter's 28, so I don't even know what that would look like. I wouldn't even want to get my hopes too high up for something like that because, things happen on paper, but they never happen to us. I've seen a lot of things on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Recommendations are really just a piece of paper. That's why we are doing whatever we can to make this happen. So last week I emailed the 50 state Medicaid directors, the 50 state Department on Aging directors, and the 50 de- um, Department of Behavioral Health directors. And one of our other volunteers, Ben, who has a website, opencaregiving.com, did the same. So there are people that are actively trying to make this happen for you, Beverly. Something else that you talked about during your workshop at our conference last month was how much you love your daughter. And I think that's an important part of the conversation. So tell us about your daughter and your relationship with her and what you so treasure about that relationship.
she's just a sweet little person. She's really a sweet person. And the things that she does, she doesn't realize that some of the things she does is not, she's not supposed to. But you know, sometimes she gets in these moods where she follows me around the house all day. And I mean, to the bathroom and everything. We go shopping sometime. Well, before pre-pandemic, we would go and we both like to go and smell soap. I know it's weird, but you know, the little, not like Dove, but the other soaps. We like to go and smell the soaps and just maybe spend a Saturday together. Um, I don't know. She's just like a mini me.
You had described her as your best friend. And part, yeah, go ahead.
People don't realize that you don't have a lot of friends when you have a disabled child. Because your kid's not getting invited to anything. She doesn't have any friends. Not one. She's never had a friend, which is so odd. So I can, all last year while the pandemic was going on, she wasn't able to go to even interact with the people at Respite. I wouldn't call them her friends, but they're at least her peers. And so I had to be her friend and find entertaining things to do. And for a whole year, that's a lot. That's a lot. It's a lot of time. But usually we do enjoy our time together. It's more work for me, less work for her, but you know, she's my daughter. What am I gonna do?
So, your sharing today is one of the reasons why it's so important that we get out there and do everything we can so that the states use this enhanced federal funding to help someone like you.
I appreciate you doing it because a lot of parents with kids with on the lower end of the autism spectrum are really burnt. They're tired. They're just burnt out. You know, there was a little boy. He was 12 years old. You know, kids with autism are attracted to water, and they showed cameras. He had been missing for like 3 days. Usually, autistic parents, they already know, well, where's the water, because the kids, they always remember where the water is. They think they can swim, they can't swim. They showed him walking into the lake, but they haven't found his body yet. So you get burned out with stuff like that because if you have a kid that's a wanderer, my daughter used to be, she's not anymore. When they wander out of the house or they wander away from you at the store or wander away from you at the park, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going towards some water because they think they can swim. Like my daughter, she's always telling me she's a fish. No, you're not a fish. And then they go in there and they drown. So you're always on that heightened alert. So I appreciate you doing this. It's important. And I hope that our governor, or I'm not sure who's in charge of the now comp now, but I hope that our governor will listen and will do something to clean up that list. I think there's a movie out now. It's called 6,000 Waiting List. There's 6,000 adults with a developmentally disabled, that has been labeled developmentally disabled, waiting on the list for a now comp waiver. And that's, to me, is crazy. It's just 6,000. And then they have they have a list for, allegedly, I haven't seen it. There's two lists. There's one that's a shorter list, and then they have the longer list, and then the whole list comprises of 6,000 people, which is wild. It's just wild.
And Beverly is in the state of Georgia, and that's the wait list in Georgia. That's not the wait list across the country. Think about it, 50 times that. And that will give you an insight into how many individuals like Beverly are just waiting for more help and support. They've done everything possible with that's humanly possible for to get the help and support they need, which is why they need us to step up and say we can do more, we can do better. The good news is there's funding available to make a difference, which is why we want to do it. Beverly, tell us a little bit about your puzzles before we close.
Well, I own a business called Puzzleabilities. And right now I'm currently making jigsaw puzzles for people on the Alzheimer's, dementia spectrum, and autism spectrum. They are sensory puzzles. So they have pieces. The puzzles are like not like the flat puzzles, but they're built up. So if there's a flower, there's a built-up flower on it, and then it smells the way that it looks. So that's what I'm doing for this season. I used to just make puzzles. I still do. If someone orders one, I'll make it, but I'm really focused on the sensory jigsaw puzzles because I think they're just the coolest thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Beverly, thank you so much for being with me today. So appreciate your sharing your story, and we'll keep you posted.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
I
Thanks for the
think
good work.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks everybody so much for watching. Be sure to reach out to your state officials and ask them to use the enhanced federal funding to support family caregivers like Beverly. You can find out more information, including a toolkit with messaging on caregiversacademy.com/funding. And our toolkit includes messaging for social media posts and for emails, the very same emails that I sent out last week. You can quickly send out in 10 minutes to individuals in your state who are the decision makers. Okay, thanks everybody so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.